Greetings, my people. So we're continuing in Merriam-Webster's A History of the World. We're continuing from the Eastern nations and Judea. Quickly, the following dates must be received as only approximate. Babylonian and Assyrian dates before the 9th century BC. Biblical dates before the middle of the 7th century BC. Greek dates before the middle of the 6th century BC, and Roman dates before the beginning of the 3rd century BC. And we continue. Eastern nations and Judea. 4500 BC, pre-dynastic kingdoms, nomes of Egypt flourishing. 4500 to 3500, risk of Babylonian city kingdoms. 4000, kingdoms of Upper and Lower Egypt probably flourishing. 3500 to 2900, Sumerian ascendancy in Babylonia. 3400 to 2390, the Old Kingdom in Egypt. 3400 to 2900, First Thinite Egyptian dynasty beginning with Menes, reputed founder of Memphis. Second Thinite Egyptian dynasty. 3000 to 2500, early Minoan age, development of copper and bronze culture in Crete and Aegean basin. 2900 to 2840, third Memphite Egyptian dynasty. 2870 to 2500, dynasty of Akkad, Semitic ascendancy in Babylonia. Sargon I, king of Akkad, Agade, reigns over a widow territory, conquers North Syria. Naram-Sin, king of Akkad, builder of the temple of the sun in Spa, reigns in Babylonia and is lord of Mesopotamia. 2840 to 2680, fourth Memphite Egyptian dynasty, era of Sennacherib, pyramid builder who had commercial relations with Phoenicia and worked mines in the Sinaitic Peninsula. Era also of Khimfu of Cheops, builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, and of Khafra, builder of the Second Pyramid. 2680 to 2540, fifth Egyptian dynasty, copper and Mayachite mines worked in the Sinaitic Peninsula. The proverbs of Ptah Hotep are composed. 2600, Judea, pastel lord of Lagash, Telo in Babylonia, a highly advanced civilization of which there are many remains. Commerce extends into Syria and Arabia. 2510 to 2390, sixth Memphite Egyptian dynasty, era of Pepi I, first Egyptian invasion of Palestine and Phoenician already occupied by Canaanites, era of Queen and tourists. Alright, so the copy are a bit bad here, guys, but I'll try my best to read it. 2500 to 2350, First dynasty of Enger, and Dongi consolidato city kingdoms of Babylonia. 2500 to 1850 Middle Minoan Age 1 and 2 in Crete and the Aegean Basin. Contact between Crete and Egypt. Greeks enter Greece. 2390 to 2000 7th and 8th Memphite, 9th and 10th Heracleopolite, 11th Egyptian dynasty. The first four of these dynasties cover obscure period of civil wars and foreign invasion. Of this period, there are few remains. During the 11th occurred the rise of Thebes, 2220 to 1926, the first Babylonian dynasty. Babylon becomes the chief city in Babylonia. 2160 to 1788, the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. 2123 to 2081, reign of Hammurabi, author of the oldest code of law extant. Hammurabi unless Babylonia and imposes code on all cities of N and S Babylonia, and on Ashur and Nineveh. Babylonian becomes the diplomatic language of the entire Near East. 2000 to 1788, 12th Egyptian dynasty, an era of great prosperity under Amenchat the first to the third. Usertesen the first to the third. Ethiopia is conquered. Trade is extended through Syria and Arabia. The reservoir lake Morris is excavated. Great monuments at Karnak, Beni Hassan, and elsewhere are erected. 2000. The Aryans, forerunners of the Medes and Persians, as well as the Indians, first appear on the eastern frontier of Babylonia and Assyria. 1926. Hittites raid Babylon. First appearance of Hittites in history. 1850 to 1630. Era computed by some modern scholars for the Hebrew patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, according to biblical tradition. Abraham is also placed in connection with Hammurabi in 2100. 1850 to 1600. Great Palace, Age of Knossos in Crete. Middle Minoan Age, the third. Extension of Cretan culture to Greek mainland. 1788 to 1580, 13th Theban, 14th Zoit, 15th and 16th Ixos, 17th Theban Egyptian dynasties. A period of decline under the domination of the foreign Hyksos, or shepherd kings, probably Asiatic Bedouins. 1746 to 1169, the third Kashite non-Semitic Babylonian dynasty. In the 1700s, Assyria emerges as a small principality. 1630 to 1200, the era according to Hebrew tradition of the sojourn of the children of Israel in Egypt, 1600 to 1350, late Minoan age 1 and 2 in Crete, rise of Tyrants and Mycenae, 1580 to 1350, 18th Despolite Egyptian dynasty, beginning of the new empire, era of armies, the first, Amenophis, the first to the fourth, Thutmose, the first to the fourth, and Queen Hatsu, 1580. Armies the first completes the expulsion of the Hyksos, captures Sharuan in Judah. 1501 to 1447, Thutmose III reigns in Egypt, conquers Palestine and Syria at battles of Megiddo and Kadesh, conquers Nubia, erects a great temple in Karnak, greatest extent of Egyptian power. 1400 to 1110, equilibrium between Babylonia and Assyria. 1375 to 1358, Amenophis IV, Chuenaten or Iknaton introduces solar monotheism into Egypt. Era of the T.L. Amarnaites, a correspondence of Egyptian viceroys in Palestine, of kings of Babylon, and of a king of Mitanni with the Egyptian court. Egypt's possessions in Syria are threatened. 1375. Hebrews threaten land of Canaan. 1350 to 1200. 19th Diospolite Egyptian dynasty. Era of Seti, the first to the second, Ramses II, Meneptah, 1350 to 1100, Mycenaean age, late Minoan III. Greeks become masters of Aegean archipelago and occupy west coast of Asia Minor. Decline of Mycenaean civilization. 1313 to 1292, Seti I claims to have reconquered Palestino and Syria. Defeats the Libyans and allies. 1292 to 1225, Ramses II, Sesostris, subdues Palestine and Syria, concludes peace with Hittites, is probably the pharaoh of Israel's oppression. 1225, Phoenicians already using the alphabet. 12 to 1090, 20th Diospolite Egyptian dynasty, era of Ramesses III, who mines in Sinai, trades in the south, and gains a great victory over piratical invaders of Palestine. Close of the period of the new empire and beginning of decline. 1200. Phrygians enter, Hittites leave, Central Asia Minor. Fall of Hitto power. Near this time, probably under Meneptah or his successors, the children of Israel, led by Moses, leave Egypt. 1193. The Trojan War begins, led by Agamemnon of Mycenae, according to a Iate Greek computation. 1190, Philistines occupy coast of Palestine. 1183, Troy is taken and destroyed. 1169 to 1037, Fort Perso-Semitic Babylonian dynasty. 1160, era of Israel's entrance into Canaan. 1150 to 900. During the weakness of Egypt, Babylonia, and Assyria, the small states in Palestine and Syria become important, and the Phoenicians are the chief seafaring people of the Mediterranean. 1146 to 1123. Nebuchadnezzar I, king of Babylon, a great conqueror, defeats the Elamites and the Lulmi and wages war with the Assyrians. 1115 to 1102. Tigiat Pileser I firmly establishes the Assyrian Empire. He advances westward beyond the Euphrates. 1115 to 1010, era of the judges in Israel. 1100, epoch of the return of the legendary Heraldry and of the Dorian migration into Peloponnesos. 1080 to 1020, era of Samuel and Saul in Israel. 1050 to 945, 21st Tonaltic Egyptian dynasty of priest kings. 1017, David reigns at Hebron over Judah, probably as vassal of the Palestines. All right, guys. Some of those parts were a bit hard to make out, but the overall information is clear. All right. So we could do in our individual times our own research and comparison. All right. So we're going on to part 2, medieval period 477 AD to 1492. Historical outline. The word medieval is used of the long period beginning at the extinction of the Roman Empire in Western Europe. Its end has been variously conceived, sometimes as being coincident with the fall of Constantinople in 1453, sometimes with the spread of the Renaissance over Western Europe about 1400. More often, with the discovery of the New World in 1492 or the outbreak of the Protestant Revolution in the beginning of the 16th century. The transitions from ancient to medieval and medieval to modern times were gradual and, of course, not perceived by contemporaries. These great divisions of history are made mainly for convenience of treatment, but they are based on something more than this. For the chief ideas and forces that underlie the development are in the Middle Ages, strikingly different from those of either ancient or modern history. Our choice of the particular points of division, however, will depend upon which of these ideas and forces we consider fundamental. In this work, the expression medieval history, open and close inverted commas, is applied to all the series of European events and transformations between the establishment of the first barbarian kingdom in Italy in 477 and the discovery of America in 1492, the period forming an epoch of great changes in the conditions and grouping of European nations. Whatever may be the historical phraseology, the old forces of civilization in Europe certainly seemed markedly to decline with the decadence and the extinction of the Western division of the Roman Empire, and Europe was transformed into a condition so unlike that which prevailed during the long Roman ascendancy as to mark a new era in human history. It was an era in which civil society was broken up and new races and new institutions were forcibly implanted. Only in the towns and cities of the south of Europe and in a few other favored localities were the remains of the old activities of the Romans any longer discoverable. Two groups of causes of this great transmutation of Europe may be noted. The first relates to the internal decay of the Roman race and of the institutions which it had created. The second relates to the upheaval and progressive westward and southern movement of the barbarian nations across the line of the Danube and the Rhine. The causes of this movement of the Teutonic nations are obscure and difficult to separate from legend. The fact of the barbarian invasions is sufficiently tangible, but not the impelling forces. The Germanic nations, seated in the north and far east, after having been held at bay for several centuries, at least broke over the frontiers of Rome and, pouring through the passes of the Alps, overran Italy, center of the empire, defeated the armies of the degenerates, took the capital, uprooted the unreal government of Romulus Augustulus, and instituted a barbarian kingdom in its stead. This was the kingdom of the Herulians, and with this event, the chronological outline of medieval history may properly begin. While the barbarian invasions were sweeping over the Roman Empire, the Eastern Empire maintained itself and was powerful and flourished long after the Western Empire was extinguished. Justinian performed one of the greatest of services to Rome by codification of the Roman law, which later served as the foundation for the civil law of nearly all the civilized nations. With the fall of the Western Empire, the political supremacy of Italy vanished, and its influence on subsequent history was chiefly due to the power of the papacy seated at Rome and to the vigor of the Renaissance. A new and unexpected force arose on the eastern borders of European commerce and influence when in 570 was born Mohammed, the Arabian prophet, founder of the religion which today rivals Christianity in the numbers of its adherents. This religion, originating in Arabia, spread through Persia, Palestine, and Syria into Africa and Spain. Its triumphal progress was checked by the Franks under Charles Martel in 732. The Saracens were driven beyond the Pyrenees and then slowly yielded till, in 1492, the last of their kingdoms, Granada, went out of existence. In 1300, the Ottoman Turks from the interior of northern Asia Minor, who were also followers of the prophets and who had long assailed the Eastern Empire, began their conquest, which culminated in the capture of Constantinople in 1453 and the destruction of the empire. The Turks held Asia Minor, Greece, North America, and the Balkan and, Danube region. Till the end of the 17th century, they threatened Christian civilization in Eastern Europe. The Ottoman Empire maintained itself over Christian subject peoples till the close of the World War in 1918. The barbarian kingdoms which were founded in Italy had little subsequent effect on Europe. The central power was shifted to Gaul, where the Franks under Clovis accepted Christianity and laid the foundation for the modern state of France. It was a prince of the Frankish royal house founded by Clovis, Charles Martel, who checked the Mohammedan invasion, and under Charlemagne the Western Empire was revived. After Charlemagne's death in 814, his empire soon fell to pieces, but was revived under Otto the Great as the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, which claiming, but never exercising, world dominion, was the strongest temporal force in Europe during the Middle Ages. A second force of even wider importance was the papacy. Through the agency of the missionaries, priests, and monks of the church, the barbarians were everywhere Christianized and brought to adopt the essentials of Western civilization. What little remained of the classical learning of antiquity was kept alive in the monasteries of the church. The influence of the Pope, however, was not confined to spiritual affairs. He claimed the right to excommunicate and depose sovereigns who disobeyed the commands of the church, and eventually brought together a temporal dominion enveloping Rome as a defense of his person and rights in rude times. The political and social system of Western Europe through the greater part of the period was based upon a feudal system, by which the functions of the state were transferred from the central authority and exercised by individuals. Socially, the individual and the land were closely associated, and according to the strict feudal theory, there was no land without its landlord and no man without his overlord. Allegiance was owed not to the state, but to the overlord, who in turn might be the vassal of a great noble. In Asia, the Sui dynasty flourished in China, but was overthrown in the 11th century by the Tartars, and the great Mongol emperor Kublai Khan established an empire which included all of Asia, save Hindustan and Arabia, and stretched into Europe. Buddhism was introduced into Japan, which meant the introduction of Chinese civilization into that kingdom. And in the 7th century, the imperial dynasty of the Mikado was established. In the medieval period, two great spiritual and intellectual movements took the hold of Europe, the Crusades and the Renaissance. In the spiritual sphere, beginning in the 11th century, came an outburst of religious enthusiasm which culminated in the Crusades. This passionate revival resulted in 7 military expeditions to recover Jerusalem and the Holy Land from the possession of the infidels and lasted through the 12th and 13th centuries. The Crusades were among the greatest events in medieval history. They increased the power and authority of the papacy and the church, and also of the princes, stimulated intellectual growth, widened men's horizons, developed commerce, hastened the rise of tongues, and established a tradition of the right and ability of Europe to exercise power in Asia. About the year 1300 began the revival of learning known as the Renaissance, which first showed itself in Italy with the appearance of Dante, but quickly spread throughout Western Europe. It began with an almost passionate study of classical learning and antiquities. It widened into a magnificent literature in the modern tongues, which were by this time established. Greek philosophers and mathematicians had long before reached Europe through the Arabic versions. After the capture of Constantinople by the Turks in 1453, these writings stimulated, though, thought of European philosophers and, and literary men, and ultimately led to the questioning of the religious authority of the church. From being purely a literary revival, the Renaissance became an artistic movement, and the sculptors and painters of that period have never since been equaled. As a result of this movement, men sought to widen their knowledge of the world, and in the age of discoveries, beginning with the 15th century, under the lead of Prince Henry the Navigator, explored the coast of Africa, discovered the Cape of Good Hope, and finally reached America. In England, the Saxon kingdom fell before the invasion of the Normans in the 11th century, and a strong monarchy was established by William the Conqueror, which was developed and protected by his successor Henry II at the expense of the great feudal lords. During the reign of John, the, the, the germ or the germ of popular government was established in the Great Charter, while just at the end of the the Tudor reigning house was established by Henry VII, which made England a strong national state. In Spain, the period closes with the accession of Ferdinand and Isabella and the union of various little kingdoms into a powerful national despotism. In France, feudalism retained its hold, and the development of a supreme national monarchy was postponed, while in Italy, the Italian cities and, and, and duchies prevented the growth of a national state, but by their rivalries stimulated the intellectual revival. Germany and Austria, though possessing an inchoate nationality, developed no strong government, but consisted of a multitude of jurisdictions, owing shadowy allegiance to the emperor. Thus, medieval history includes the long struggle of the Christian church to maintain itself in a contest with the new barbarian conditions, to resist the aggressive assaults of Islam, and finally to read or to readjust itself to the changing forces of the time, economic, political, and intellectual. It leads up to the story of the Crusades and of the institutions of chivalry which came afterwards. It describes the struggle of the papacy and its gradually developed constitution, first with the empire, then with the national states, whose powers and organizations were maturing as a result of the empire's weakness. It includes the revelation of a new world hitherto unknown except vaguely in the story of Atlantis, the sagas of Icelandic bards, and the tradition repeated by Mandeville. It is the background of the growth of representative institutions, the economic and political advance of the tongues, and in the westernmost parts of Europe, the increased participation in government of the middle class. It brings Europe up to the revival of art and learning, the reformation of religion, the division of the continent into nations under conditions political and ecclesiastical, which prepared the ground for the division of the church and nations into Catholic and Protestant. Chronology. The barbarian ascendancy in Europe. 477 AD, the Herulian king, Odessa, confirms his authority in Italy. From his capital of Ravenna, he maintains his authority in Italy for 14 years and is recognized as patrician by the Emperor Zeno. 486 Clovis, or Chlodwig, king of the Franks, invades Gaul, defeats the Roman governor Syagrius at Sois sons, and by this victory destroys the Roman ascendancy north of the Alps. 493 Theodori the Great, king of the East Goths, lays siege to Ravenna and compels Odosa to surrender it. Theodoric establishes the, the Austro-Gentile kingdom in Italy, and Odosa is put to death. 496 Clovis converted to Christianity and baptized. 507 Clovis emerges in a war with the Visigoths, whom he signally defeats in a battle at Poitiers and obtains the mastery of Aquitania. 511 He dies and his territory is divided among his sons, Theodoric, Childebert, Clodomir, and Clotaire. 525 Boethius, the philosopher, author of the Consolation of Philosophy, after filling the highest offices under Theodoric the Great, is falsely accused of treason by his enemies. He is imprisoned and executed by the order of Theodoric, who dies in the following year. 527 to 565 Justinian reigns over the Eastern Roman and Byzantine Empire. 529 to 534 Justinian promulgates the code, institutes and digests law books which have profoundly influenced the whole subsequent European legal development. Chosroes the first, greatest of the Sassanid dynasty, ascends the Persian throne. He divides the empire into 4 districts, encourages learning, and introduces many reforms. 534 to 5 Justinian's general Belisarius leads an army against the Vandals in Africa and the Ostrogoths in Italy. He regains Sicily. 536 Belisarius continues successful warfare against the Ostrogoths and enters Rome in triumph. 537 Justinian consecrates the Cathedral of Saint Sophia, which still stands in Constantinople. 538 Vitiges, king of the Ostrogoths, besiege Belarus in Rome, but is repulsed. 539 Belisarius attacks Vitiges in Ravenna and takes the city. 541 He is recalled from Italy and carries on a war in Syria against the Persian invasion of Chosroes the First, who he successfully withstands. 552 Narses, who succeeds Belisarius in the command of the Italian army, vanquishes and slays Totila, Badalu, Bada, Badu Illa, king of the Ostrogoths. In the following year, the Ostrogothic kingdom is finally destroyed by Narses, and Italy is restored to the dominion of the Emperor Justinian. Narses is appointed the first exarch, exarch i.e., governor of Italy, with Ravenna as his capital. 554. The, the, the Alemanad and Franks invade Italy. They are routed by Narses. 558. Clotaire I unites Franks into a kingdom. Unites Franks into a kingdom. 561. On Clotaire's death, the nation is again divided into petty states. 566. The kingdom of Gopaldi in Pannonia is destroyed by the Lombards and Avars under Albolon, who marries Rosmunda, daughter of the king of Gepaldi. Of Gepaldi. Number 3. Early modern period, 1492 to 1841. Historical outline. Modern history strictly includes the whole recent progress of mankind to the present day. It is convenient, however, to group together the events and tendencies of the 3 centuries ending with the close of the Napoleonic period, during which the habits of thought and government, the organization of society, and the religious beliefs of the Christian world took on the forms with which men of today are familiar. This modern era opens with the age of discovery. During the Renaissance, man was finding himself. Now he found the world. No change in the whole course of history is more significant than that which resulted from the expansion of the Roman and the medieval world, which took no account of anything outside the Mediterranean region and Western Europe, into the modern world, which includes Asia and the Americas and the Isles of the Sea. The epoch-making voyage of Columbus and the discovery of a sea route to India by Vasco da Gama meant more than the discovery of the new lands and the opening up of new spheres of trade. It opened the way for expansion from Europe and the foundation of colonies east and west, which developed into new nations, holding different ideas from those of the mother countries. In this age of discovery, Spain was preeminent. The strong monarchy established by Ferdinand and Isabella was in a position more favorable than that of any other European state to throw its strength and resources into the foundation of a colonial empire, and the Spaniards were bold and successful navigators and traders. Spain took full advantage of her opportunity and laid the foundation for a colonial empire not inferior in extent and even in duration to that of ancient Rome or of the modern British Empire. She impressed her language, her religion, and her culture upon South America, the West Indies, portions of North America, and the Philippines. And down to 1815, her control was still active. Then the colonial empire collapsed and finally disappeared, except for Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, which lasted into the 20th century. Spanish language and religion remained the basis of South American culture. In this period came the logical result of the religious and cultural impulse of the Renaissance. the Protestant Reformation. Beginning in the series of attempts to remedy abuses of the Roman Catholic Church, the movement under Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, Knox, Huss, and their followers caused a schism which has never been healed. Though chief issue was of doctrine and of culture, the denial of the authority of a universal church and a reliance on the dictates of the individual conscience, not only did the Reformation put an end to the universality of the Roman Church, but in the religious wars which followed, it, it dislocated the political power and weakened the influence of that other great medieval institution, the Holy Roman Empire. The age of discovery opened the world to European settlement, while the Reformation led to the foundation of Protestant powers which denied the papal authority. Both Catholic and Protestant nations entered the race of colonial expansion. Thus, France, through the discovery of the St. Lawrence and the explorations of her voyagers and missionaries, opened up and acquired an empire in North America, including the valleys of the St. Lawrence and the Mississippi. So too England, after breaking the naval supremacy of Spain, founded colonies along the Atlantic seaboard, which were a perpetual challenge not only to the papal power but to the sovereignty which Spain claimed over that region. In the Eastern Hemisphere, first the Portuguese and then the Dutch acquired colonial possessions and tapped the lucrative trade of India. The period was favorable to the development of strong national states. England had a system of representative government in the elective House of Commons, but allowed Henry VIII to exercise an almost absolute monarchy. Henry's daughter Elizabeth also was a genuine national sovereign, though arbitrary. The popular element in the government, however, joined issue with the Stuart kings, and the civil war against Charles I laid the foundation of a real parliamentary government which was superior to the crown and which, after the, after the accession of William III, became supreme. In Russia, Ivan the Terrible and at a later date, Peter the Great, by unchecked absolution forced the nation into contact with Europe and made a beginning of modern political organization. In Austria and Germany, the Holy Roman Empire perished in a feeble and declining form, a bar to the development of vigorous nationalism, a poor defense against the onslaught of the Turks. During the period, the Baltic powers of Denmark and Sweden experienced periods of prosperity and wide European influence. Oh my goodness, guys. Woo. We print very bad here, but I think I got this part good. Better than the previous part. Oh my goodness. And we continue. This is a lot of information, but good information. And I mean, in terms of at least from their records, at least from Webster's historical records, um, in the sense of how the governments of the world and how the nations of the world and the different countries that we live in today, how they came about and all the wars that took place back then, all the lives that were taken and all the changes in religion and influences and laws and codes and things like that. We actually seeing we could actually, we have our record to see where we came from the sense of the structures that were in place and what was implemented by Justinian and these guys coming down the road. The papacy, talking about the Pope, the Renaissance, the medieval period, the Crusades, coming down the line. So we actually have we actually have a record where we could follow or trace from the past what took place to lead up to the type of system that we living in today. All right, some of the parts bad, guys. I do apologize. This is the copy that I have. If anyone has a better copy, please feel free to send it for me, and I love reading it. I love reading it for you guys to follow along with me. We'll read it together. All right. Well, I'll try my best on those bad printed parts to read it. All right. So all right, we continuing. I have some work going on in the background there too. I don't know if you all might hear it. All right. I do apologize for that. We continuing. We continuing. So especially under Gustavus Adolphus and Charles VII of Sweden. Italy was the prey of the ambition of the greater European powers and the scene of frequent wars and invasions. In France, beginning with Francis I, a strong national state was developed, which, though torn by the religious wars of the Huguenot period, became under Louis XIV the strongest factor in European life and politics. The 18th century witnessed the struggle of Europe against the supremacy of Louis XIV. In a series of wars which encircled the world, France was defeated in India. America and Europe and England emerged as the most powerful modern states with the widest colonial possessions. Prussia rose as a force to be reckoned with and became the center of Germany. So I'll read that again, right? America and Europe and England emerged as the most powerful modern state with the widest colonial possessions. So America today, who has what is called the mighty military industrial complex. Europe and England where we have the England Bank, right? The financial capital of the world, England, and we have Europe, right? These countries here that um have the court system where we have the legal system that operating around the world. So the 18th century closed with what may be called the era of revolution. In America, the English colonists questioning the right of England to control their economic development and demanding wider powers of self-government declared their independence. So you see here in the 18th century, in America, the English colonists were questioning the right of England to control their economic development and demanding wider powers of self-government declared their independence. With France as their ally, they achieved their aim, and the United States of America was founded, which was destined to make the military force and political ideas of the New World a factor in European policy. So you see, the United States of America was founded, which was destined to make the military force and political ideas of the New World a factor in European policy. European policy, America was to be the military force and to be behind the military force and the political ideas of the New World of the European policy. Right? So you see how they show you how they connected here? America, Europe, and England. England, economical. America, the military power. And Europe, political ideas. In France, the revolution was of even greater effect. It gave point to the teachings of the philosophers of the previous age. The despotism, which had continued from the days of Louis XIV, based on the feudal system, fell before the attack of democratic ideas. Feudalism was destroyed. France became a republic, and her republican ideas permeated even the most despotic systems of Europe, while her revolutionary armies attempted by military force to mold these ideals into enduring nations. From the democratic enthusiasm of the French Revolutionary Republic developed the military empire of Napoleon. Once again, as in the time of Louis XIV, France dominated Europe and one man dominated France. Spain and Italy were conquered, Prussia and Austria were humbled, and Napoleon drew the boundaries of new states, placed new sovereigns on old and new thrones, and impressed his system on all Europe. Only England and the declining Turkish aggregation of peoples remained outside his power. In 1812, he invaded Russia, but the very vastness of that empire defeated him, and a disastrous retreat was the beginning of his downfall. Under the lead of England, the European nations reallied and on the field of Waterloo were finally successful, thus putting an end to the ambition of France to dominate Europe. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 remade the map of Europe and established boundaries and policies which, with the exception of the unification of Italy and Germany, persisted throughout the 19th century. Thus, the year 1815 may well be taken as the ending of early modern history and the beginning of 19th century history. And we reach chronology, the chronology of early modern period of 1492 to 1841. All right. So we're going to stop there and we'll take it up from chronology on the next read. All right. My brothers, my sisters, my kings, my queens, strength and powers, strength in body, powers in mind. Stay up.